question before we start. I have a very irreverent sense of humor. Do I need to tune it down?
Oh,
Okay.
oh, I'm looking
All
forward
right,
to
so
this.
oh my God.
All right, so we're ready. We're here with our sixth and final conversation of today, World Conversation Day, the first edition of which is happening in Trinidad and Tobago. And we're really happy as Trini Good Media and Bocas Lit Fest, both hats I'm wearing today. And it's an honor, really. And I'm happy to be here again consecutively on another topic that I feel very strongly about, and somehow I ended up, chairing this one again. And I think we have a great selection of people here to help us sort of distill reflections around this idea of growing old. So first we have Arielle John, well-known writer, artist, various things, consummate creative. We have Kevon Swan, who is an attorney, but who's also doing Barbara Jenkins' Mentoring by the Masters class. And you're telling your life story,
I
is
am.
it?
Yes, I am.
Fantastic. And then we have Nicola Cross, who is in this phase of her life, she says, a filmmaker, and she just turned 50, and she's very proud and happy about that. So thank you for all of you for being here, and welcome. And I want to ask the first question about your concept or notion of old. What is that to you when you think of old? Because we all have different ideas. I remember when I was 10 what I thought old was, right? So what is your idea of old?
I don't know that I know what old means, and I think it changes all the time. My father died at 96, and my mother is now 87, and I think my parents were always younger than I am, because they were vibrant. The telephone would call, and I knew it was for them. So I think old is anything, and I think it changes with culture as well. It's definitely a social construction. To me, I don't know. I mean, I turned 50 last month, and I'm just very excited about it. And I think I still don't feel old. I feel older. I'm not sure I feel wiser. I feel I have a bit of experience about certain things under my belt, which only means that I know or I understand that I really know nothing at all.
Nice. That's what we have to look forward to. Arielle.
Old. I've always been told that I have old age. No. But again, that has also shifted for me throughout my life. I think old for me is somehow locked into ability. So for me, when an adult person starts to lose either their mobility or their ability to just mental capacity, or when the parts start to shut down in a real, substantive way, that the person can't necessarily function as they would have before. Presumably if they were an able-bodied person, for me, I kind of clocked that in my mind as old. Do I use the word old? I probably don't, hardly ever. I probably say something like senior, some other euphemism for it.
So did you find yourself cringing when you saw the topic growing old
Of
alone?
course
Yes.
I did, Ardene. So, but yeah, it changes, it shifts around.
And you, Kevon?
Well, for me, I don't really have a concept of what old is going to be, like what age, because, exactly that. It keeps moving, because the closer you get to what you used to think was old, you tell yourself, no, it's not this. So for me, old is not really losing ability, it's gaining ability. And for me, it's the ability to say whatever I want without filters. I've always thought that when I reach a certain age, that will be old enough and senior enough in the society that I'm widely respected as an elder. I'll be able to say whatever I want to whomever I want. That's what being old is to me.
And around what age are you thinking that
Well,
happens?
so it's a delicate balance between having no filter and Alzheimer's, right? So hopefully I'll find that gray area at some point and I'll get back to you.
Gray area, nice.
So let's talk about this thing becoming old. This word that you probably feel very uncomfortable with, but the idea of aging alone. Yeah, let's talk about that and how that has shown up in your individual experiences so far.
For me, jumping off of the conversation that happened earlier on mortality, think thinking about aging for me as a teenager, I never thought, for some strange reason, I thought by 25 I was gonna make it to 25 and I'm out. Like, bye everybody, peace. It was nice. So that for a very long time, I think I went through most of my childhood not having a future plan for my life, not knowing what I wanted to be in terms of like some kind of orientation or discipline or something I wanted to study or become. Like, I had no proper vision for myself beyond, early adult years. So in terms of the process of aging, something I was thinking about before is, what is aging at a time when we just got a report this week coming out of Australia saying humanity has 31 years to live. Because we messed up the planet so much, and it's not going to be here if we keep at this rate in 31 years. So what is the process for me as a millennial thinking about aging when, in a time of declining resources, in a time of, everything is just going down, literally. And it's hard to conceive of myself as an older person, or as a much older person, maybe double my age in the future.
But you've thought about it in the context of your parents.
Yeah.
Sure, and them.
Sure.
And them aging.
Mm-hmm.
And so how have you been able to reconcile, I think about it all the time, what my mother was doing, how many children she had at whatever age I was at,
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you make those comparisons between where you are in your life and, for instance, your parents?
Absolutely. I think when I turned 25, my father started asking me the grandchildren question. He's since stopped. I don't know if he's given up or if he just tired of asking. But in terms of like what they would have had, and I think the recognition of a dream or the recognition of purpose or what I understand my being here to do, I just think we have different orientations, and my mind is in a way different place than what their priorities would have been when they were my age. Chalk that up to like access or increase access to things and ideas, and just the ability to have a safe enough life to dream and have dreams and have goals. Not to say that having a family is a lesser goal at all. It's just not mine right now. So yeah, the comparison is obviously there. And sometimes, family makes it a little difficult to make you feel like you might be missing out on something, but not strong enough for me to like change that too hard.
And Nicola, you took care of your dad.
I took care of my dad, and then I'm in the process of taking care of my mom. So I do think it's this construction, because it's almost old as a state of mind or maybe a state of body, but it is this changing thing. And for me, I agree with what you said, becoming 50, it's almost like, I was doing what I wanted anyway, and now I have a license to do it. Like, I have a certificate, I've been given the certificate. And there is also a sense of, again from the panel before, of you are alive. And I have had people pass, and therefore it's a privilege to be alive in lots of ways. There is also the upside of people who say, when I used to say, Dad, how old is your father? Oh, he's 94. And they'd go, oh, how wonderful. And I was like, but you didn't ask me about the quality of his life. You've just assumed. And I think there is, and I don't know if there's a religious connotation as well in Trinidad, and many places, of just of being alive and being able to breathe as a privilege, as something that's really special and important. But I get that when you see children who have died, who have passed, and you've been involved in their lives and their families. But so there's a sense of kind of urgency, a kind of responsibility. And also, if you haven't figured it out yet, you need to figure it out now. So just the other day, my repression, I went to the beach and I decided I wanted to skinny dip. And there was no one there. I still wouldn't, I was just like, it's not that I feel bad about my body, but there is some societal something that says I shouldn't be doing this. Where on earth did I get that? I certainly didn't inherit it from my parents or any, But it was just like, you know what, you're going to have to do that. Maybe you fake it till you make it. And so there is this sense of, this is it. If you haven't done it yet, you need to do it now. And so that's kind of allowed me, not a new lease on life, but allowed me a sort of a vibrancy, I suppose, or not quite urgency, but yeah.
But do you think about it in the context of do you ever think about it in the context of being alone by societal definitions in terms of not necessarily having children or a life partner?
Well, I mean, what is alone? People are married and they're living in the same house and they're alone. But there is a... Okay, so...
But it's certainly not lonely, right? Because that is
Yeah.
a separate thing. But we are talking about just not necessarily having a community to fall back on that I think people who have families understand exists for them in a particular way, or at least they assume exists for them in a particular way as they get older.
So I suppose my community might be more my age group. So even if we all get together and live in a commune, it's be too heavy for me to pick up. That's the reality. And then there are all sorts of factors like economics. Well, are we going to be able to pull together to hire a nurse who's going to look after all 10 of us? Poor thing. And so that is a practical reality. And then there's also euthanasia. And would I go somewhere to make that choice at some point? But then if I got to the point where I wanted to make that choice, maybe I won't be able to move anyway. I wouldn't be able to get on a plane. So how's this going to work out? So I think it's there, but it's also kind of like it can't govern me. And how do you get that balance right?
Kevon, what about your observations of people in your life and how they have lived, especially people who are older or getting older, who are aging, and how you see the quality of their lives affected by not necessarily having a close partner or a child around?
Yeah, that's a difficult question because I've had or I've seen in my life and particularly my family like kind of polarized different versions of that. Because, for instance, I have an aunt who's now in her late 70s. She was married briefly, but didn't have children. They divorced. I think he died now. And she lives by herself. And she's pretty self-sufficient, but she has the support of her sisters. Because she's one of like 6 or 7 sisters or something. They're scattered all over. She's in the UK and she has maybe one other in the UK, but they support each other. On the other hand, I learned of, I do actually know him, an uncle who died, and he was alone. He died in his youth. He was a gay man. He lived in the US, and he died of HIV, and he was never spoken about and not really supported because I learned of him because I was told, well, yeah, he died in the States, buried somewhere. And I was like, well, why he didn't come back? Or why didn't you all bring him back? And you're like, well, you know, AIDS and gay. And so, I mean, I feel as though it depends now. I don't know his full story. Maybe he found community, you know, in the larger community. But I feel as though he experienced in that way. I mean, he aged up to maybe 25 or something because he's in the first wave of HIV-related deaths. But I feel as though it really depends on the support system that you have. It's something that I myself worry about because I'm pushing 40 right now. Same thing, no children, no partner, no anything, and I don't know if anything is going to happen. And I worry because I think, I don't know how much of my family will be around by the time that I get to a senior age where I would need somebody. I grew up with this concept of my mother saying, it was big about cohabitation. You need to have somebody there to hand you a cup of water. Or Milo in the night, some hot tea. And it still scares me because I'm like, all right, I feel fine, everything is okay. And, you know, I enjoy my life and I enjoy all the freedom that I have from being alone and maybe hopefully to continue long into my aging process. But what about the day when I'm not able to get myself that cup of water? Then who's going to be there and what's going to happen? And I mean, I may have friends, I may have maybe wider family around, but that actual cohabitation that was like drummed into me as a child, I don't know, something I'll have to deal with if I have to deal with it.
You know, when I think about it, when I'm trying to put on something that requires assistance, just something
Yes.
so simple,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And I can't reach. And when I'm sick and I can't do very simple things for myself, that's when I think about it.
Yeah.
What am I going to do?
But I suppose the question is, well, the question for me is, how are you going to feel if somebody, I don't know that I want anyone looking after me. I've done it. I'm done it a second time. I don't know that I want to put anyone through this. And yet it was an amazing experience. It kind of allows you to go full circle and resolve stuff. But I don't know that I want to put that on anyone. Maybe it's because I haven't given birth to somebody. I don't know.
But it's not part of life, though. Like, even the discomfort of taking care of me. In my case, I mentioned this in the previous conversation with my grandmother, doing things I never thought I would have to do with my grandmother. But there's a kind of honor in it as well. You know? This woman who would have taken care of me and done all kinds of things for me as a child, you know, and saving my life maybe on several occasions. You know, do you not think there is some value in even just going through that experience of caring for someone else, even if it's not in the most dire of circumstances? But Arielle, you live with an aunt.
Yeah, I live with an aunt. She's like mid-70s, and I mean, she's in St. James, and she has space in her house. She has 2 extra bedrooms. And the decision to continue my isolationist way of living, which I would prefer, versus like sharing space with an aunt who, you know, allows me to have my own space. We're really good on like, you know, minimal communication. We talk and we chat and we laugh and everything when we feel like it. It's not forced. It's not like, you know, we get each other and we operate really well in that space. And considering an opportunity to like rent by myself, it's like, you know, I think she thrives off of that company. In Trinidad in 2019 is a safety thing primarily, I think, for both of us. What would it mean to be a young woman living alone in 2019? What would it mean to have a much senior person living alone in 2019? In St. James, where my neighbor, like the lady that lives behind us, was in front my window and got her bag. Like somebody tried to take her bag from her, and my bed is like by the street, so it's literally about 4 feet away, and that thing happens. Yeah, how would we negotiate to have someone around? She does have children, but I'm the first point of contact. Something happens to her. Where was Arielle? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we've built that kind of relationship, and it's functional and it works well. I also know that I have my ways, and I prefer to live alone. I've always been that way, much to my parents' disgust. But they're like, this child has been locked up in the room whole day. But that's just how I've managed to live. And if I were to, you know, have some kind of life partnership with someone, I think a separate living arrangement would be my ideal situation. Whether it's separate rooms or separate, you know, we could be neighbors.
Separate countries.
Works really well.
Been there, done that. So yeah, I just function better that way. So I've been trying to balance how do I function in this very antisocial way that I could be as an Aries sometimes, versus like a need for community and love and care and family support, and just like exchange of stories and learning from her and helping around the house, all those things.
Can't we be Golden Girls? You know the Golden Girls?
I know.
Right? Like
that's charming. That's a charming.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if among your peers, all of you, if you think this is something that people think about, are they talking about it? Do you think there's a noticeable generational shift in how concerned people are with being alone or being part of something bigger than themselves, and how that factors into their quality of life as they get older or as they age?
I think we're thinking about it. I don't know that we come up with plans and, you know, who's going to which commune and who and what, but I don't know that we're actually really doing anything about it.
Yeah.
And I suppose most of us are starting to look after parents, or seeing that it's round the corner and, like, you know, better enjoy things now because it's going to get, you know, different. So there's a consciousness, but I don't think it holds us back.
Yeah, I don't feel held back in any way by it. But in terms of like peers or colleagues or whatever, I don't know about everybody else, but I feel like as a man, I get lots of judgment because there's always like, so you don't have nobody? How come? And there's always something like, it starts from a place of something must be wrong with you.
Yeah.
Let's figure out where it is. And you see them go through like a whole list of questions as to what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
You seem fine, you know, on the whole, but something must be off. And it's just a decision, really. I mean, it's a decision based on circumstances because I would be happy if I were to find, well, I'm gay, so I'd be happy if I found Mr. Right. But, I mean, if I do find Mr. Right, then I'm going to enjoy and have my best life. But there's always this thing about, it's never, well, okay, he's by himself or she's by herself, whatever, and that's cool. No, it's always, so, but why? Like, I need to have, I always have to explain why I'm alone, and it's just like, So I don't know how the commune is going to work, but maybe we'll exchange numbers after.
We can figure it out.
Build it.
Kevin, I'm going to ask you a question. I know, it's something I've thought of many times, but I do think about my friends, a lot of my gay male friends, and the loneliness that I see. And there is a kind of concern among them about, well, how do I confront getting older on my own, like especially when they're in a position to care for parents, and they're able to do that for them. And I think that, again, there's a privilege in it, but there's still a sense of, well, what's going to happen to me?
Yeah, I mean...
But is that something that you find real in your space, in your sphere?
I find it real, and I talk about it with my friends. I can't say that I have the answer. If I did, I would have sold it by now and been rich. But yeah, I do have the answer to that. But I mean, it is a reality, though. The fact of the matter is that the most that you could do is the same thing that you're saying. Try to enjoy your life right now. Make the best choices that you can with the information you have right now, and just hope for the best. I can't tell anybody anything else. This is what I do,
It's interesting what you're saying, because I was wondering in terms of gender and getting, older. I mean, it's like 50 is like spinster. You know what? I want to change that word and make it mean new things, right? Like spinster, you all don't like that. Watch this spinster go, right? And so I was thinking in terms of, male and female and growing old. And like my mom, she talks about feeling the age. I can't even remember what age, somewhere back then. She's taken down practically all the mirrors in the house. If I take a photograph, she's like, I don't want to see it. Because she has this image of what she looks like, and she doesn't want the reality to, and so I'm not there yet, but that's genes, but it will come, and I don't know how that feels, and I think for women it means different things because of the societal construct. So I don't know, it's interesting to...
Because from my point of view, I mean, for men in general, I think, and I can't speak on behalf of all men, right? I'm not every man, but I feel like for us, you have less societal pressure in terms of your looks, and then they're like, oh, you're older and you're more distinguished. I'm dyed my hair because I'm going grey. But, you're older, you're more distinguished and all that. But in the gay community, though, it's a little bit different. Because unless you, get older and you get more muscular and become a daddy, and you're bare, then you're just old dude. And we don't have, I think also because of HIV, because of stigmas in the society and worldwide in general, we don't really have that sort of passage of information, and elders, because they have a whole group of men that were just wiped away. And so I feel as though men my age and a little bit older, I'm not going to say how old I am, but yeah, my age and a little bit older is like, coming up or seeing young guys come up and then they say things like, well, HIV is like diabetes, which I actually heard somebody say is not really a big deal. And then you try to talk about the hysteria that I experienced in the 90s, and they're just like, Wow. So it's different. You have all these societal permutations, but definitely, I think aging in terms of the physicality of it definitely harder for women from where I sit. Because of, it's just like, well, you no longer look like 25, so are you really valuable? Do you even exist? I don't know if to a lot of guys, if women over a certain age exist. They just no longer exist.
Wow.
And it's similar to me in the gay community. After a certain age, you're like, either you're a daddy and you're really hot and rich, or you're just like, who's he?
Wow.
And Nicola, is that something that you think about, like how men, perhaps your age, how perhaps they look at women younger than you now?
I don't think about that so much, because I don't really think about men all that much. It's usually been an accident.
You mean you thinking about them as an accident?
No, if I have a relationship, it's an accident.
Oh, okay.
I'm not kind of going, like I'm busy doing the stuff I need to do, and then, oops, there he is. Oh, he's really nice. And So I don't think about it in that way, but I have friends that do, and I think it's real. You know, a lot
Yeah.
of men leaving their wives for younger women. It's real, and I've escaped that so far, but maybe not forever. Yeah.
Arielle, what about you in terms of? So my understanding is that this conversation ends at 10 to 6. It's 20 to 6 now, so we have 10 minutes left. Thank you, Franca. Arielle, so you're very clear that a family is not exactly on your list of priorities at the moment.
Yeah, the priority list, definitely. It might be something 5 years from now. My direction in life might change, but I don't know. I hit 30 and I got some weird wake-up call and was like, oh, shit, there's shit to do. And since then, I've just kind of been focusing on work and career, and that might change tomorrow as far as my impulsiveness is concerned. But as for right now, it's not on the cards.
And you don't give any thought to, suppose when I'm ready, it's too late, or are you surrounded by that? Because that's a thing that I found, like I've never really been worried by it at all, but I have had people around me who have actively worried about
On your behalf.
what if, well, not necessarily for me, no.
Okay.
I think they've given up on me, right? But no, in terms of their own lives,
Yeah.
you know, not necessarily seeing it going down the
Yeah.
path they would have hoped.
Yeah. What is the is must is, you know. What I think a lot of, I've managed to somehow cultivate this community where a lot of my friends or mentors, not really, but friends are in their late 40s, 50s, in that bracket. And some of them are having their first children. And it's been okay. And it's been healthy and it's been safe and they're doing well. So that is less,
So it's
that is less of a
inspiring.
concern. Yeah, that's less of a concern for me at this point. Yeah. Sorry, Mom.
And and you don't think about being an older parent.
Nah. There are enough people around me, I think, enough younger people around me within my community that could pick up the slack. Would be happy to pick up the slack, you know, chase behind my child, you know, on my behalf, kind of thing. So I think I'll be okay.
You know, I remember as a student in school, it always struck me that some people's parents seemed so much older.
Yeah.
Not that my mother was particularly young when she had me. She was in her 20s. But it was clear that some people's parents were just so much older.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I just thought, wow. And that was like a whole new world for me because it's not something I'd ever experienced, you know, and, you know, going to my friends' homes and actually sort of experiencing that dynamic of a much older parent or parents with a young child, a teenager.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm wondering, like, what if you've had in those kinds of interactions, what have your observations been in those scenarios in terms of generation gaps?
They join the gym. The parents join the gym. At least as I've seen it. And it kind of forces them to keep fit and take care of their health more. I feel like some kind of other gear kicks in and they're way more invested in their personal health and like well-being for the sake of like having to nurture that child and be there present for that child in a particular way.
Right.
So, yeah.
Kevon?
Wow, I feel really bad talking about this, but the honest truth is I'm guilty because I remember in primary school there was this guy, I can't remember his name because he didn't stay for the entire 7 years, but his father, gosh, so bad, his father was super old. I was really young, like maybe 7 or something, and he was our age, he's in our class, but his father was just so old. And I think we ostracized him a little bit because we were like, At that
Really?
age, yeah,
Wow.
really, we were like,
Well, you know,
that's
children
cool.
are just mean.
Of course, yeah.
So awful.
Yeah, I was an older child, obviously.
Okay.
But with an adult perspective now, I'm fine with it. Me personally, I don't think that is a choice that I would make. I feel like past a certain age, I think my father wasn't really involved in my life. So if I were to have a child, I'd really want to be involved. And I feel past a certain age, I wouldn't be able to give that like fullness, you know, that complete involvement. So for me, I wouldn't make the choice. You know, if I were to be with somebody who had a child, well then, I mean, it is what it is. But no, unless I'm young and able enough to be crawling behind that child, come back, child, come back.
Let's talk about this concern that many people have about somebody making the decision to put a parent in a an elderly home, a home for the elderly. That's still very taboo in many quarters in Trinidad.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, I told my parents
Yeah.
not long before they got old. Find your old people's home.
No, but it still is. And people are sometimes shamed for doing it, for making a decision. And people make the decision out of necessity.
Right.
And there seems to be a lack of empathy for that. But that's a cultural thing because, you know, I guess our parents and before them, the idea was that the community took care of its own.
Yeah.
But, you know, I guess we've evolved away from that because of the demands and constraints of our
capitalism.
lifestyles, etc. But what are your feelings on that? And do you think that it's necessarily a step down? Because, I mean, it is possible for an older person to find community in a home for the elderly. It doesn't always happen because we know elder abuse is also very real. And there's a lot of ostracization or...
Well, elder abuse in the home as well.
Yeah, no, that's exactly the point.
Right. Elder on elder abuse. Wow. Yeah.
Where are you going to get it?
No, but what are your thoughts on that in terms of where we're going as a society and you seeing people having to make those very difficult decisions sometimes?
Well, I think it's difficult. I think it depends. I mean, it's like putting your child in school. It depends on the personality, what age you're going to put them in school, because there's a social thing as well. I remember, you know, I tried to get Dad into a home at one point. I was like, okay, so to hell with Dad, let's just go. There's this bloke there that you know. Let's just go on a Wednesday, right? And he went and he had a couple of Caribs and he loved it. And he was like, I'm going home now. And I think, you know, I was concerned that he wasn't getting enough social interaction. But my father was 52 when he had me. And he didn't want to hang out with old people. He wanted to hang out with young people. So that one didn't work for him. And he was fortunate enough to die at home. So I think personality has a lot to do with it. My aunt went into a home. She loved it. They went to the president's house. She was sewing for everybody in the home. And it gave her a new lease of life that she didn't have in her own home. My mom is kind of, depends on the day. She likes a home. There is something about familiarity in her home that I think gives her a quality of life. I was thinking of moving her at one point to the other side of the town just because it was closer to the cinema and she could walk there. But even moving her like 2 blocks, her neighbors, her immediate neighbors are there, and that was going to change everything. And then do I put her in a home? But the home, it depends on what homes are available, what you can afford, because they're ridiculously expensive. And then at what, because, you know, if it's a home where they're a vegetable, you know what, at some point you might do that. I did promise my mom, I said, Mom, you are not leaving your home until you cannot appreciate being in your home. And for me, but my mother's very pragmatic. She was a nurse and she's like, so again, it's personality and opportunities economically as well as socially. What is available? How do you care for this person that you love and you're...
Any thoughts on that?
No, I fully agree. My grandmother died when she was 94, I think. And she was, so we lived in Point, she grew up in Point Fortin. But by the time she was too old to care for herself, we had moved to Trinity and she had to come with us. And she was so attached to, you know, living there for how many other years, you know, and she'd always be so, when, because she had started to, you know, lose some of her faculty. She's like, so when are you going back home? When are you going back to Point? And it was the most that we could do. So it really, I agree fully, it really depends on, you know, that person's personality, their comfort level. If somebody were to put me in a home because they couldn't care for me, I would understand once it's clean. I have a major fear of germs. No, really. Like, this is no joke. All right? So, yeah, so once that's fine. But it all depends on the circumstances, all of those that you would have highlighted. And that's the thing, right? It goes back to the point that you're making about skinny dipping. I don't feel as though anybody told us, well, maybe except your parents directly, don't put old people in a home. It's just this societal expectation. But if there's one thing that I've learned in my relatively short life, is that, I mean, yeah, you have societal expectations, but you just really have to do the best that you can. You know, and I mean, sometimes you do things based on societal expectations because you want to please society, and I think it'll give you good karma. But it's not going to give you good karma if you're doing it for the wrong reasons. So just, you know, if it is that a home is what you and your elder have agreed on, or what is in his or her best interest and is what he could afford, and it's clean, then I say, do it.
Are we making the most of our elderly folks? People who would have contributed in some way, shape, or form to Trinidad and Tobago, to the region. They retire. What is our view of those people? I mean, what are our expectations of them as a society? How do we value them? And is it that we seem to think, or do you get the impression we seem to discard them once they hit 65 or so?
I think, yeah, we're definitely once somebody has done their work and they cross a certain threshold, out of sight, out of mind, once they retire to their homes and disappear from the national imagination, yes, of course, like we see it all the time. Every time a Calypsonian has to go on the news and ask for money because, for whatever reason, for their surgery to cover their health costs and that kind of thing, and it's always a plea to the nation and that sort of a thing. So I don't think, of course, we don't respect our national heroes, our elders, enough to, I guess, not just put things in place for them, but also help them, like us at this point in our lives, like having the knowledge and the know-how to put aside things for when that time comes for us as well. So how are we preparing for the aging process? And I just got an NIS number the other day. I didn't know how that functioned until very recently, and that's a scary thing. But as an artist and somebody who generally works independently sometimes, nobody told me about what that process was, and I just took it for granted. I was like, oh, I've been a student for so long. What's an NIS number again? Oh, okay, cool. Nice. So just, I guess, access to education and knowing more to put things in place for ourselves.
Nicola?
I don't think we value old people enough. I don't know that we know what to do with them. I think it's all a construction. What is old? There's just so much wisdom. I mean, I've been spending a bit of time in England, and I'm already old. Everything is for 16 to 24-year-olds. Who am I? Nobody. I think here again, I echo what you were saying there. But I don't know. Maybe it's partly to do with age. So I know a lot of people who were brought up by their grannies, and I guess my dad was my dad, but that was the same age difference. And so I actually connect with people who have this sort of thing with old people. And there's just something there, and I think, so the people that I see, but that doesn't help them when they're old.
Right.
It doesn't tell who's going to look at that's not. So I think maybe in terms of policies and structural and institutional, I don't know that we're caring for them, but I'm not sure that we're caring for anybody.
Anybody.
Mental health issues, I mean, it's big.
Just to jump off that, I really need to say, I just feel like our policy and our life, local life in terms of aging or old people, is move out the way, granny. And I say that especially based on your point. I remember, and this always stuck with me, and I think is one of my fears of aging, because you have fears of the unknown for some reason. And in terms of aging, it's just, I remember I was trying to get into work, and it was on the priority bus route, and it was a whole lot of us, and we all competing for a maxi. And competing for a maxi early morning on the priority bus route, if you don't know, it's like the Hunger Games. So you're climbing and jumping over people. And I saw this, I can't remember if it was an old man or old woman, but I know it was an older person. And they were standing there, and every time a maxi passed, they tried to, walk towards the maxi door, and of course would pull up, shut the door, and go. And this person kept doing it. And you see people, and then you start to create stories for them. And I was thinking, this old person, they must be going into town for 8 o'clock to stand up for the whatever appointment in whichever ministry, and they just can't get there because they can't get into a maxi, and they don't know when the next bus is going to come. And I don't know if they have a bus ticket. And I fully agree. You ever went to Citygate and think about being 70 and having to walk up and down all those stairs? We just don't create, it's very ableist, and it's not, we don't create systems for older people, It's kind of heartbreaking, and it's also a bit scary. And I feel like me being somebody who is in the service now, young enough to work, I should be doing something about it. But honestly, I'm not going to preach. I just don't know what to do, how much I could do.
I mean, I think I've become more aware of older people having to look after them, and so it's kind of like,
Yes.
oh gosh, that's mum over there. Oh gosh, let me go and help this old person
Right.
because it could be my mother. And I know
Yeah.
mum's coming back with a walking stick. She's like, everybody's so amazing. Everybody's always helpful. So I think there were good things and bad things. So it's come back to the institutional
Yeah.
thing again.
Well, I think we may have to leave it there.
Sure.
Just like 2 minutes over. But Arielle, Kevon, and Nicola, thank you so very much for spending
Thank
this
you.
last 40 minutes with us of our World Conversation Day, the first one in Trinidad and Tobago. And so we're just going to get ready to say thank you. We have a few thank yous to say, actually. So we're going to switch out a bit. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a few.